Excellent. So let me have, and feel free, folks, go ahead and type all your questions, any kind of thoughts or concern you have. So let me ask you, Adam, what is the average, per acre return you've seen historically within your group, and maybe like for Texas or not Texas, if you have that number?
Yeah, I brought up, we just got last week some new land value averages. So I just brought up Texas, and Texas has a range, but it's not, it's definitely not out of our averages. The only
Okay.
place where we see below average values in Texas is at the very western edge of Texas, kind of your El Pasos
Okay.
and the counties surrounding that on the very western side of Texas. But everything else in Texas, wherever you're at, even up in the Panhandle by Lubbock and Amarillo, but by Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, all of those are going to be at our averages or above. Our average for properties purchased in the last 5 years, our average return per acre is $1,700 per acre, and that's across the country. Now, a lot of folks are going to experience more than that because that's a 5-year time frame. If you're at the newer end of purchased properties, your average number is going to be higher, because really what is going to impact this return the most is the purchase date of the property more than anything else. There are factors for everything. What's in the soil is definitely a factor, but purchase date, that's going to impact it the most. As an example, if you purchased in 2024, you're going to have a higher value of return than if you purchased in 2019. And those two would be higher than if you purchased in 2012. Just simply, we all see it. Things get more expensive as we keep rolling along. And that includes both land value and the market value of all of these nutrients. And that's what's really going to drive the deduction value up, is the market value of each of those nutrients. So if you've purchased in the current calendar year of 2025, you would or in 2024, you would definitely be at a higher end of our average than if you purchased in 2022 or 2020, which would still be in that 5-year time frame.
Okay, excellent. There's another question, Adam, and the question is: are there risk, limitation, or misconception about nutrient deduction programs that we should be aware of or we should understand?
Are there risks to it? No. As I was saying, these are codes that are 70 years old at this, well, no, 60 years old at this point, 65. So they have been in our tax codes for decades. They are not partisan. They're not subject to any sort of the tomfoolery that happens in DC from time to time. I'm sure we can all appreciate that. So they're not going anywhere either. These are codes baked in to the system. As you could imagine, there are folks that will attempt to skirt the system and overreach and get deductions that they should not. And those are the folks that have red flags go up at the IRS, and they are going to have some questions asked to them. We don't do that. We operate in a very conservative manner. We don't attempt to overreach. We always operate above board. And what we do is just display the data. And then how you take the deduction is up to you and your tax professional. I should mention what you actually will get in the deduction is based on a couple of different factors. One is your tax bracket. And there was a lovely example in the start of how your tax bracket affects the overall quote unquote cash value you get to put against your tax liability. The other is going to be how much basis is left on the property. Now, if it's a newer property, we don't really have to concern ourselves with that. But if it's an older property, that is something that comes into question. What the deduction cannot do is take you to zero or a net negative. What it will do and what it can do is reduce your basis by up to half. We don't recommend that you reduce the basis more than half. There's still value in having the farm and the land in the ground and the money in that. And by basis, if anyone has questions on that, what that is the taxable value of the land that is remaining. That reduces over time. As an example, had a gentleman call me a couple of weeks ago. He inherited his family farm when he was 18. He's been farming it ever since. And when he called me, he was 91. So he had 73 years of paying taxes, reducing basis, and farming that same property with no change in ownership. So we can't help him. The value of the deduction and the value of the nutrients is set from the time of purchase, which for him was 73 years in the past. So they would not have that much value left. He might have $1 of taxable value per acre there. But here is the sad thing for him. I didn't tell him this, but the sad thing for him is when he passes or beforehand, if he sells that land, the new owner of that property can engage our services on the exact same property because there's been a step up in basis. There's been taxes paid. There's a new establishment of value, and there's a new basis there. So that's how the basis works. It transfers and changes every time there is a transfer in the value of the land and taxes paid.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Adam. Love it. Okay, another follow-up question is for in general, and you might not have an answer to this, but that's fine. Can foreign buyers or LLC-owned investment qualify for this deduction also?
Yeah. So LLCs is both of those are very simple. Yes. As I mentioned earlier, the deduction goes to the owner of the property, whether that's the LLC or if you're a foreign buyer. Even if you're a foreign buyer, this is farmland in this country. This would be the same if I bought sheep pasture in Ireland, dream, but not happening yet. I would pay taxes on that land to the country of Ireland, not to America. And I'd have to follow their tax laws and their programs and their processes. It's the same for here. So you would, as the buyer, if you were somewhere else, you're still land in America owning that. You'd be the owner of that property. You'd be entitled to this deduction. And it'll happen when you file the federal tax returns for that land in this country. For LLCs and things of that nature, it's the exact same process. Just transfer the mindset of I'm a person who owns it to the LLC is the person who owns it. And the tax professional prepare the taxes for the LLC the same way you would do if you were an individual person.
Okay, excellent. Another follow-up question was, does participation in the LMD program affect your ag exemption or zoning status in any way?
So no, the ag exemptions, if the only one where it will have issue is if the land is in CRP. So when it's in CRP, we have a discussion that has to be had. If the land is in CRP and you're being incentivized to not grow anything, you're being paid to not produce crop, that will be land that will not qualify. If you are being paid for restoration in the future that you will be producing crop, that land is land that will qualify.
And Adam, for the purpose of our folks that don't understand the Conservation Reserve Program, can you explain what that is, please?
So the Conservation Reserve Program is a couple of things. One, in those two examples I just gave. One is the government pays you, the landowner or the farmer, to not produce something in order to help regulate the market for that particular something. As an example, there are several folks out there that have their land in CRP that normally would produce something like soybeans, but they're being paid not to produce soybeans commensurate with the what they would have been paid if they did produce soybeans. So I make this much and I would have made this much money. I don't make anything and I'm paid this much to not pay or to not make anything. Okay. And the reason that happens is it helps regulate the market for soybeans. So if everyone just produced everything they could all the time and there were no buyers for soybeans, that will drive the price of soybeans through the floor, since there would be no demand, but we have huge supply. So it's more beneficial for some folks, not for everybody, but some folks, to take that ag land, put it into CRP, and receive compensation for not producing anything. Those folks in that example would have land that would not qualify for our program. Now, on the flip side, the other option in CRP is the following. We have a piece of land that was something before. Let's invent something. It was a gravel quarry, okay? As an example. It could be anything, but for this example, it's a gravel quarry. So there's lots of pits and lots of ponds, and I can't produce anything. I want to produce something, and my plans are to produce something in the future, but the land has to be altered a little bit. That's too big of a cost for me to do. I put my land in a CRP, and I'm compensated slightly to help move the land and restore it to the point where it can be productive agriculture. That would be land that would qualify in that example, because I'm moving it to produce productive ag in the future. And again, I'm moving it to whatever. I'm moving it so I can plant corn. I'm moving it so it can be a dairy farm. I'm moving it so it's pasture land and I can roam sheep or cows or what have you. I'm moving it to be a vineyard. I'm moving it to be an orchard farm. Any sort of productive ag, and I'm moving towards it. So like I was saying at the start, just to wrap it up, when it is CRP land, when it's in conservation, we have to have a discussion, and because we can't do our process if there is no ag for which the deduction goes against. If I hope that makes sense.
Yep. Awesome.
So we can if there's going to be ag, but we can't if there's nothing out there.
Okay, got it.